Hey guys, iKailaKai here, and Merry Christmas. It is Christmas Day in Japan right now. I'm going to be opening this up. This is the 2-year anniversary Japanese set, and also I asked some people on Twitter for some questions. There's a lot of questions, so I don't know if I can actually get to all of them, but thank you if you did ask me a question. I really appreciate it, and I will do my best to try to make this interesting. This video is more for people who just want to know a little bit more about me, so if you're not interested in that, no harm. I don't really take it personally. But I will also be opening this, so I guess you guys have something to watch as well. To start off, we have a couple of questions about how I got into TCGs, what things I used to play before. So actually the first TCG that I ever played is the One Piece card game. The way that I started was that, so the official anniversary of One Piece I think is July 22nd, and my girlfriend's birthday is July 24th. And it just so happened to be that I think the card game came out right around the time of my girlfriend's birthday. And she's actually a One Piece fan, and although I wasn't at the time, she kind of wanted to try buying the cards. So on that day, we ended up buying a couple of packs, and we pulled this alt art. There really aren't that many cool looking cards aside from the alt arts, and I felt pretty bad just having a bunch of anime screenshots. So I thought maybe I'll try to learn the rules of the game. And then 2 years later, I'm making content for it. Let's just see what we have here, just because I've opened it now. We have a deck box case, a couple of promo cards, sleeves, and a playmat case, as well as a playmat, I presume. I just want to point this out, though. Everything in this set is golden, except the sleeves are like mustard yellow, which is a bit unfortunate. It would have been nice if they were also golden, but however, since starting the game, I have caught up on the anime, and I do enjoy it a lot. That being said, I don't think it's my favorite anime of all time, and I do have a couple of questions about that. First of all, who is my favorite character in One Piece? So my favorite Straw Hat is Sanji. And generally when people ask me what my favorite character is, I will say Sanji, just because I feel like it's weird to say a side character because they don't really have enough screen time. However, my favorite side character's story is Kirose. Kirose in the Dressrosa arc alongside Rebecca is my favorite backstory, and as such, I really do like Kirose and Rebecca together. If I have to choose one of them, maybe I'd say Rebecca, just because I've played the deck so much at this point that I've become really attached to the character. But Kirose's backstory with Scaretto and him taking care of Rebecca despite her not knowing that he's actually her father, that's my favorite backstory, which is why I like them the most. Now, as I really enjoy Kirose and Rebecca, Dressrosa is my favorite arc in the show, and my least favorite arc, I would maybe have to say, is the Fishman Island. I just didn't really like Hody that much. My least favorite villain, however, is Abisalomo. Not very funny and very weird and not very cool towards women, and I didn't really like that, so really don't like him as a character. I have another question. What's your favorite alt art leader? My favorite alt art leader is the Kirose leader. I think it's just really well drawn with all of the colors as well as Scaretto and Rebecca behind him. Just really great. I just wish the leader was a little bit better. I do also really like the red purple Luffy leader, just because you can really feel the haki from the card. My favorite anime actually is Attack on Titan. Maybe it's a bit generic, but I've been watching it ever since it released back when I was probably in middle school. Always been a fan of it all the way until the end, and I kind of grew up with the show in the way that many people have grown up with One Piece, and as such I'm very much attached to that show. Let's open up another thing. We have the deck box. It seems well made. It's a magnet case and is wide enough to fit double-sleeved cards for sure. Feels nice to finally have something to put my cards in. Do you think that good fundamentals can win you games with bad decks, or are the top decks just too powerful in their own way? So let's say that the best player in the world is playing something like Red Uta against a relatively new player. Let's say that he has like about a month of experience, so he kind of understands how the rules work at least, is playing something like Blue Doflamingo in this meta. I think that the best player in the world would probably beat that Blue Doflamingo player. I do think that in this game in particular, skill is an extremely important factor, and is the reason why you tend to see a lot of the same people topping in a lot of tournaments. That being said, I think that if you are a top 1% player playing against a top 20% player, and you're using a weaker deck, then the difference between those two may not be that big. Because a lot of times the way that you win is not by you playing perfectly, but by being able to capitalize on the opponent's mistakes. If people of an average skill level make a couple of mistakes that the really good players can capitalize on, then despite whatever deck they're making, even if they're using a terrible deck, even if they're using a great deck, they will be able to know how to capitalize on those mistakes rather than knowing how to play their deck correctly. Bunny asks, what do you find to be the biggest difference in attitude or mindset towards the game between JP players and Western players? So I'll be honest, I haven't really been to the West that much, so I can't really comment on the average player. But talking to a lot of top players in America and Europe, compared to talking to a lot of Japanese top players, I feel like perhaps complacent may be a bit of a hard word to use, but a lot of Japanese players will play their best decks and just become perfect at it. Whereas I feel like from the people that I've talked to a lot in Europe and America, a lot of these players try to find ways to find edges in the deck building side. I think that maybe Japanese players try to figure out how to play the game perfectly, whereas maybe because of the release timings, Western players just tend to try more interesting things. Whether or not one region is better than the other, I can't really say. That being said, especially in Tokyo, there's a lot of extremely high-level players that just play at random tournaments. This means that it's very easy for these, I guess, lower-level players to be able to catch up and close the gap between the higher-level players because there aren't really bubbles of strong players because strong players are just everywhere. In this way, I think that people are a lot more active in seeking out and helping other people in the community in Japan, and also it means that if you go to a locals or you go to a flagship battle, the competition is extremely difficult. I did end up going to a locals when I was in Europe a couple of months ago, and of my 4 rounds, I believe 3 of them were beginners. I could tell from their play, at least I didn't ask them. And in a Japanese local, I'd be surprised if in 2 locals I'd find 1 new player. People who play in Japan, even if they've only played for a couple of months, you can't really tell that they're new players because they just catch up really, really fast. And I think that a lot of that's just from the willingness to learn and seek out information from other people. And that's through things such as Note or just reaching out directly because in Japan it's very easy to do so. That being said, Impact asked me when I am going to Japan, and the answer is I don't know, but I do want to go at some point. Because I make money in Japanese yen and America functions in dollars, which are much stronger than Japanese yen, it's a bit difficult for me to, because it's a lot of money. But at some point, I would like to go just to meet people, maybe go to a regional, see how I can do, and just have fun, you know. At some point, I'd like to do that, maybe this year, but depends on how busy I am with my work. Speaking of work, I have 2 questions. The first one is, what made you want to pursue an architecture degree? For those who don't know, I have a degree in, I guess it's technically interior architecture, but I'm not a lawyer, so you can call it whatever you want. The reason why I tried to get into architecture, for 2 reasons, I think. First of all, when I was in middle school, Minecraft came out, and I really enjoyed Minecraft, and I was like, wow, building things are so fun, so I want to become an architect. That's probably the first seed of which that thought came about in my mind. But what actually cemented it was that for 7 years, from middle school through high school, I was making robots. It's a bit long to explain what all of that is, but I was making competition robots that play games made by a company called Vex. And when I was making these robots, although all of my friends that were inside of my robotics team with me went into IT, engineering sort of degrees, I went into a design degree. And the reason why I did this is because I realized that what I enjoy in making robots is not the process of engineering something perfect, making the correct 4-bar, making the perfectly optimized scissor lift. These sorts of things didn't really interest me. The thing that interested me in this was being able to design a robot to be able to do a task within the constraints that were given to me. As such, I realized that instead of engineering a robot, I was designing robots. And for that reason, coupled with the reason that I just enjoyed buildings, I decided to go into interior architecture. Now what I do for a job is basically that. I design interior spaces, but I also help build them, which is why my hands are completely disgusting. Maybe you can't see it from that far away. But I get my hands beat up a lot because I am actively building the sites that I'm also designing, which is a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work, and that's why my uploads have been slow recently. The follow-up question from Father Khan is, how do you speak English and Japanese so well? So the answer to this is because I was born in America. I was born in New York, and I lived there for a couple of years from when I was born. My mom got tired of America, so we decided to move back to Japan. However, my parents thought that it was a bit of a waste to lose the English that I had learned up to that point. So instead of making me go to a Japanese school, they made me go to an international school. And that was really a great decision because now I can speak English well. So Very nice. As for Japanese, because I live in Japan, I talk to a bunch of Japanese people, and that's how I've been able to maintain my Japanese, despite not actually having a curriculum in Japanese. I think the only native English speakers that I talk to are the people that I know in the One Piece community. So sometimes I'm a bit out of practice in my English and it just comes out a little bit weird, but that also happens in Japanese. So I wouldn't say that I'm perfect at English or Japanese. I would say that I'm decent at both. Moving on to the playmat. Playmat box. Has the nice golden shine on it, which the sleeves didn't have, and has the nice same feeling as the deck box. So although I prefer the playmat from the 1-year anniversary more, this is quite nice with the way that the logo shines in the corner, and the feeling of the mat's very nice too. It feels very high quality. So pretty nice mat. I still probably end up using my Rebecca mat. Speaking of the Rebecca mat, Brayden asked me, where did I get it and can we buy it? Unfortunately, you can't buy this mat because of Japanese copyright law. In Japan, because this is a One Piece character, I am infringing on their IP. I can make it for my own personal use, but I cannot distribute it because that's illegal. This art, however, I drew. As I said before, I really enjoy Rebecca and Kirose, and if I'm going to have one of them on a playmat, I'd rather have Rebecca on the playmat. So I drew this, and then my friends over at Dugon Gang helped me turn it into a playmat for me. I am forever grateful for that, and I will keep using it. Thank you for helping me turn this into a playmat, guys. Next, Dirkless asked, what is the most enjoyable deck you've played? If not a meta deck, what sort of support do you want it to see? So my favorite deck in recent time is Red Purple Luffy, because I enjoy slamming big things on the board and watching my opponent try to deal with them. I think that it's funny, and although there isn't too much skill expression, there's a lot of skill expression in how you build the deck, and that's very enjoyable for me. The deck that I played the longest, however, is Green Kid, back from OP01 all the way through, halfway through OP04. Green Kid does something that most decks even now don't do, and that's just being able to switch the entire game plan of the deck. Green Kid would originally just play the early game slow, setting up things like blockers or setting up things that can control the opponent's board, until eventually they drop 8-cost Kid. Back in the day, 8-cost Kid was very hard to clear, and as such, after you dropped it, basically your leader was 8,000 power for the rest of the game unless they could find something like Otama and Jet Pistol to get rid of it. So what Green Kid would do was that he would play the early game very slowly, very defensively, targeting the opponent's board, and then when 8-cost Kid was dropped and his leader becomes 8,000 power, now he just suddenly just goes into a mode where he just keeps using his leader ability and hitting the opponent's life to take them down in 1 to 2 turns after that. As such, I think that just these sorts of decks that can turn the corner, even decks like Yellow NL, are a lot of fun just because of the way that they can shift their game plan so suddenly from being extremely defensive to extremely aggressive. I really enjoy Green Kid, and it's weird that I don't enjoy Bonnie because they are kind of similar, but I think that it's due to the fact that Bonnie doesn't have a leader ability that makes her restand and keep punching very hard. RJ asked if I could ask Bandai one wish, what would it be? Well, it's not limited for OPCG cards. So I think that they have the rights to it, because I remember talking to a friend about this, so I might end up being wrong, so if I'm wrong, sorry about this. But I really want something good based on Berserk. Berserk's my favorite manga of all time, not the anime. I still read it even though the creator of the manga has died. And Berserk's a weird story, where the story's very slow and isn't very good for something like an anime, which is why the anime flops so hard. And there's so few characters, so it's very hard to turn it into something that's marketable, because most of the characters are Guts or his random friends. If I remember correctly, I think they have the rights to Berserk, so they could do something with that if they ever wanted to, but if I ever get something Berserk related, I'd be super happy. Was there any leader in OPTCG that immediately just clicked with you, and why? I don't think that there is. I think that most leaders that I've played takes me a while to sort of figure out how it's supposed to play, and then from there, I kind of figure out its series of moves. If there's a leader that has clicked with me very well, I think that it's NL, but I do think that I have an unfair advantage on NL because I had Jonas Abraham teach me basically how to play NL at the time. As such, the reason why it clicked for me was because he kind of explained all of the logic to me before I even got started with the deck. And that's part of the reason why I enjoy the deck, is because he showed me that NL isn't just a brain-dead deck, but actually a very skill-oriented deck. Although it gets a lot of hate for being a very brain-dead deck, I do think that there's a lot of skill expression, especially in the late game with NL. If there is a deck that did click with me the most, it'd probably be that, but I do think that's mostly thanks to Jonas teaching me the fundamentals of the deck. I think the last question I'm going to talk about regarding the game generally is, how do you go about developing off-meta decks that are successful, i.e. what you did with Perona? So maybe my YouTube audience doesn't know, but the first version of Perona, where she ran the Navy package, I, as well as some of my friends together, developed that deck. Basically, what I do when I develop a deck is I just find something funny. Like, for example, that Roshinante is searchable off of Brand New as well as Baby 5. Same thing that I kind of did with the new Smoker, where a lot of the cards are searchable off of Baby 5 as well as the new 1-cost Virgo. Basically, I just try to find these interesting combos that weren't possible before and just try them. I will try maybe like 90 different ideas, most of them in my head, and then maybe 10 of them will actually get to the point where I think maybe I should make it, and then of those, most of the time 0 of them actually turn into a decent deck, and sometimes they'll turn into something that's worth talking about. Perona was just one of those ideas that I had in the past, and it just happened to be quite good, especially in a meta where people had no idea what Perona did. Once people started to figure out how to play against Perona, the deck became a little bit weaker, unfortunately, and then the Wamakuni buffs came out and someone else found that version. Generally, though, for these ideas, they really are just ideas. I start with an interesting card combination or something that the leader can do that other leaders can't do, because I think that it's important to find out why you'd use that leader over someone else. For example, if you're going to play Yellow Kid and you play it just the same as Yellow Enel, for example, playing extremely defensively, or you focus on trashing the opponent's life and cheering out characters like Kataguri, then you might as well play Enel or Kataguri. As such, it's important to find something that Yellow Kid himself can do with his unique identity as a Supernova Yellow leader. I look for the unique identity of decks and just see if there's anything there that could be possible. Most of the time I think of this from the frame of the meta. Where or how do you play most of your games? You seem to know a whole lot about meta shifts and matchups, so do you just play a ton of locals, play on the sim, or something else? I think it's the something else. I kind of just stalk Twitter. Now, I understand if you have like an English Twitter, you won't get Japanese tournament results, but because I live in Japan, I interact with people in Japanese. Most of my Twitter is Japanese tournament results, and by following along what people have been winning with or not, I can see how decks go up and down in the meta. Generally, after a certain point, there's going to be 3 or 4 top decks, and then from there, it's just a matter of what decks can break into the top 4, what decks end up going up or down within the top 4, and then what decks can you make to be able to combat with those top 4. If you think about it from that frame, then it becomes very easy to track, because all you have to think about is there's these top 4, this new deck, for example, Blue Hancock has been coming up recently in Japan. How does Hancock do against these top 4 decks? Well, she does very good into Teach, she does very good into Shanks, she does okay, a little bit losing into Doflamingo, and she gets destroyed by Purple Luffy. So is she going to be meta? She can be played. She probably can't be tier 1 though, because she has a couple of bad matchups. In this way, it's very easy to, without playing the game, sort of understand how the meta can shift depending on what other people are playing, and put it in the back of your mind. In this way, when we ever get to a meta, for example, where Purple Luffy is just non-existent, then you can remember, oh, Hancock was good when that happened the last time. So in these sorts of situations, it's just good to know the general matchup spreads of each deck, and be able to see what's been going on, to be able to read the meta, and be able to predict how it might evolve in the future. For example, although Hancock is very popular right now, I think due to this Purple Luffy matchup, she probably will end up coming down a little bit with time as people start to get used to fighting Hancock. I'm sorry, I still have a lot of questions that I haven't really gone over. Like, I don't know how to respond to Hiroshi's "How do you stay so handsome?" But I will talk about one more question, because I think it's very interesting. Before we get into the last question, however, let's finally go over the cards. So, here are the cards in the 2-year set. They are extremely shiny and extremely textured. And the gold border, I know it's a bit controversial, but I do like it a lot. Super nice shine. That's all I can really say, I'm sorry. And interestingly, I noticed that these cards weren't in the premium booster collection. So I am happy that they're here, but also wish that they had a premium booster version. Nonetheless, we finally have them here in a slightly overpriced card collection. The blue on this is actually extremely nice with all of the... Wow, it's so shiny. It's like blinding from my point of view. And this Roshinante is actually the most expensive card in this set. I'm not surprised. I thought the sub would be a bit more expensive, but this Roshinante really needed an alt art. And I'm glad, because Niji Hayashi, the person who drew this, one of my favorite artists in the game, and this is just a great art for him. Although I do wish that we did have new arts instead of these just being old arts with texture as well as a new background. They are just really nice, so I can't really complain much. The purple on this is actually really nice too. I think the Kaya looks the nicest, but my favorite color in general, not in One Piece, is purple. So, very nice. Ooh, look at the gems on her. I don't even know. I don't even know if those are gems, but the things on her shirt shine like crazy, and her hat. Oh. Our one yellow card. I do really like that his hand is right where the log poses, so makes a very cool effect. Let me get that in the light. It's very hard to see like that. Very cool. And then how the entire card has texture all around him. Overpriced set, but the cards in it are super nice. What do you think people can learn the most from? Doesn't have to be OP related. Experience and hard work. I think that maybe it's a bit cliche to say this, but if you don't fail at doing something, you don't understand how it fails. I think that in anything, even card games, outside of card games, you really just need to try something to actually know what the situation is with that. Many people will be too afraid, for example, I know a lot of people want to become YouTubers and they're too afraid to just start it. I was the same. However, despite not really knowing how to edit videos, I just kind of jumped in, and for now I've been doing okay. I think that in any sort of other context, you don't really know what's going to end up going wrong, so you end up worrying about everything that can end up going wrong. If you don't just jump in and figure out the problems as they come, then it's just going to be a big ball of stress that you can never actually overcome. As such, being able to experience things and understand later why it did or didn't work is most important to being able to actually grow. On top of that, I think that just working hard to make sure that you improve as a person is important in hard work. In Japan, we have these things called bad luck years. When you have bad luck years, you have 3 years in a row of bad luck. Maeyaku, Honyaku, and Apoyaku. And I actually, 2024 was my Honyaku, my very bad year. In Japan, although we call it a sort of bad luck year, we don't actually treat it as a bad luck year. What it means actually is that if you don't work hard, then it'll become a bad luck year. So actually what ends up happening a lot of the time is that people during these things, these bad luck years that we call yakudoshi, actually have some of the best years of their life because they're the years that people try the hardest. They work towards their goals because they know if they don't work towards their goals, then the bad luck's going to strike them. In my first year of bad luck, which is last year, I had probably one of the worst years of my life. Very long story, don't really want to go into that. But this year has been really good year for me, honestly. I graduated university. After that, I started my YouTube channel. I also hit 10,000 subscribers in the same year, which is crazy. And in the meantime, I also got a job that's actually very nice. Generally, you only have these kinds of years a couple of times in your lifetime. And this was the first time that I've had it since I was born. But it ended up being one of the best years that I've had. But I think that without the bad experiences that I had last year, I wouldn't really be able to be doing what I have now. Because I didn't try last year and I felt miserable doing it, this year I've been able to put my mind to the things that I really enjoy doing, to try to push harder, to try to make things better, to eventually get to the point where I am now. Really, I think that just the most important thing is to, first of all, be kind to people. But it sounds oversimplified, and as someone who overcomplicates things myself, it seems fake, but it really is just that. You need to just try things, and then if you fail, then you just try again, learning from that experience. In a card game context, this experience is what's going to end up helping you win, because you don't know how you're going to lose to decks if you don't first lose to them. You don't know how you're going to win against decks if you don't first beat them. In this day, you slowly aggregate data on what turns into a win and what turns into a loss, and you can slowly become better as a TCG player. And then in the real world, this works the same. I'm going to try my best next year to make content just as good as this year and even better, bringing in more unique Japanese perspective as well as European and American perspectives to try to make the best, also Latin America, to make the best content possible. I'll be trying my best to just keep making my content better and better. Some ideas won't work, some ideas will, and I hope that you guys, with me, can hopefully start something new. Bye-bye.